Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today, and it's time to talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2's DLC, because yeah, I'm still working on the final verdict video. At this point, I'm going for broke, right? I'm beating the game, I'm beating all the side quests, I'm beating all the DLC. We'll talk about it all at once in December, finally. Appreciate your patience, but yeah, I can already say, like, top 5 game of the year, no doubt about it. So when Warhorse reached out and said, hey buddy, we know you're working on that final verdict video, why don't you check out the DLC a little bit earlier, you know? So I went, all right, why not? Mysteria Ecclesiae is the latest and final DLC for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's out for $13.99, and this DLC dropped alongside patch 1.5, which brought new lip sync and facial animation technology to support additional languages beyond English, which I think is great for newcomers around the globe. But this marks the end of KCD2, as it already received its Legacy of the Forge and Brushes with Death DLC as part of the expansion pass. During the live stream that revealed this DLC, Warhorse also confirmed that they're moving on to their next game, but that something new is on the horizon, and I'm very keen to find out what it is. I mean, I'm crossing everything I've got that it is a Lord of the Rings game. I can't think of a more perfect fit, or a Viking game. We can talk about that separately. But ladies and gentlemen, I've found this game so wholly fulfilling as a Bethesda Game Studios fan. Like, this game has that sort of energy, but it has all the evolution and the really well thought out RPG mechanics that I've been looking for from their games for a while. So when Warhorse offered to sponsor this video, as I clocked my 70th hour of my mainline playthrough, I went, all right, no problem. I have no issue taking a detour and seeing what this final DLC has to offer. Now, keep in mind, before we go forward, I have yet to play Brushes with Death. I have yet to play Legacy of the Forge. So this is the opinion of someone who hasn't even finished the game yet and has kind of, I think, played the DLC in what feels like the ideal way, as I'll break down, where I just kind of went off on a detour. I did this like 7-hour quest line, and now I'm back in Bohemia proper and just doing the main quest. What kind of got me more interested, though, because Warhorse Studio has such a phenomenal reputation, is how this DLC is also keeping up what I think, at least on Steam, is their DLC rep. It's mixed over there. And when I saw that, I went, not too hot for the usual hot developer. But when you look at their DLC across the first game and the second game, a lot of those are mixed on Steam. And it seems like some people love them, some people hate them. It's just always a blending of opinions. It's not as universal as their base game. So is it really that meh? We're going to talk about that here today. Again, shout out to Warhorse for sponsoring today's video. And let's begin. So the setup for this DLC is that you work with Master Albic. He is the royal physician. So you're going to help solve what is the source of this deadly illness that has taken over the Sedlets Monastery. Now, this DLC takes you to said monastery, and that is a whole separate map. This was number one that got my attention because, again, I talked about Bethesda Game Studios earlier. I'm thinking of like Shivering Isle. I'm thinking a little bit of, you know, Far Harbor. I'm thinking of those DLCs. Point Lookout. Like, take me to a new location and give me like a dedicated quest line within that location. That's what Mysteria Ecclesiae does. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this main story is pretty short. For 14 bucks, you're getting 6 quests for the main line, and they won't take you long. I mean, 7 hours max. Maybe you can put in a range of up to 10 if you do all of the side content, all of the activities, and you really stop, smell the roses, talk to everybody. Maybe you get lost a time or two, don't know what you're doing. Then, yeah, sure, like up to 10 hours would be a comfortable range here. But that's just the basic setup. I want to go through a list of pros, things that I think people will take issue with, but I personally didn't, which kind of counts as a pro, but I want to make that distinction clear. And then straight up cons for the DLC, things that I don't think you will like. So on the pros front, for me, I think this is clearly inspired by Pentiment, which I think is a phenomenal video game. I mean, just based on, of course, the setting and time period alone, that helps, but it's really the gameplay style. I mean, the Sedlets Monastery is beautiful. It feels very lived in, with a lot of major characters roaming all around, and the game's DLC makes full use of them. So it's about walking and talking, and that kind of bleeds a bit into the things I think people will take issue with, but that I personally did not. I do like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2's combat system. I just think It's a little easy to cheese, especially when you get Master Strike. Thanks, Master Tomcat. And it kind of becomes, to me at least, a bit of an afterthought by like the mid game. So it starts to lean heavily on its dialogue and its characters, which is fine because those are incredibly strong in this game. But this DLC, I mean, rips combat out of the equation. I fought one dude in like the first 3.5 hours. It was like a little fist fight. Otherwise, though, it's a complete focus on dialogue and stealth. Now, I'm a weirdo with these types of games. As I've talked about with, say, again, we'll go back to Bethesda Game Studios. I love in games like Fallout or Elder Scrolls how literally every object in the environment you can just like pick up and touch and loot. And so I love that sort of immersive sim element that's in those games. And obviously KCD2, a game fully dedicated to the idea of realism, lets you do a similar thing, interact with a ton of objects in the environment. Why am I bringing all this up? Because when stealth's a big focus in a game like this, it all of a sudden becomes an immersive sim. And my favorite thing about KCD2 is going to sound so weird, man, but it is breaking into places, breaking the rules, trespassing, stealing things, robbing people blind, and like watching the NPCs look around, and then me cluelessly sometimes throwing things on my body and being like, oh, I'm wearing the thing I just stole, and getting like in trouble for it, maybe convincing a guard to look the other way. I like being a criminal in this game. It's awesome to me. And so this DLC really focuses on just dialogue and stealth. And I was reading the reviews on Steam, and I get it. People don't really like that about this DLC. For me, I'm like, oh, I love this. I love the writing in the game. I love the characters in the game. And I love the stealth in the game. And you have a whole DLC kind of dedicated to that. The problem is it's a bit of forced stealth, and I won't break down as to why, but it also just feels a little redundant at certain points because as I'll transition into with some of the cons, the forced NPC schedules are a bit of a problem here. So it's not like KCD2 proper, where like time passes gradually. In this DLC, it feels a bit more like a game rather than a simulation. This does betray not only the core design philosophy of KCD2, but I feel like with a progressing illness, this DLC was perfect for what KCD2 does. Like, if you don't figure it out in time, everyone dies. Like, that would have been so cool. And I do feel like that was a big missed opportunity to just lock the quests into different phases of the day. It does give a certain level of passage of time and mood and atmosphere, and kind of creates that distinct feel for different chapters in the story. So it was a bit of a trade-off, no doubt a creative choice, but it's not one I fully agree with. So I do feel that does bleed into the stealth a bit, where you'll have guards post up in very specific spots and you'll crawl around and be like, okay, I know you're right here. I'm going to throw a rock, go around you, or sometimes just sprint by them and you'll go into just a random camp. And when you're in that camp, it's like, oh, you're fine over there. You just couldn't run in that alleyway. So it's a little bit forced. It isn't perfectly done, but again, I do like the stealth in the game, so I'm not too upset about it. But again, this is kind of where I talk about cons and things I think y'all take issue with. The other issue I did have with this DLC is the main villain is a little predictable. I don't think it makes the story as a whole uninteresting, because there are some really interesting revelations I'll leave to you and your discovery, but kind of like ways they're approaching religion within this monastery and maybe disagreements happening about that religion. I found that aspect of the story neat. I also found the core aspect of like, what is this illness, to be really interesting too. The problem is that the kind of evil person in all of this driving it forward is like right there in front of you, man. Like, yep, that person, got it. It's so obvious, and it's weird because KCD2, again, as the base game, does a great job of basically having a 3-step quest structure and then just offshooting and making you go up like 15 different quest steps. And when it loops back around, you're like, oh my God, like that was crazy. I can't believe I did all of that over there, and now I'm back here. This leads to those moments of like, as you're organically learning about the world and the setting, like the villain reveal hits a lot harder. It didn't really feel that way with, again, this storyline, where I feel they should have been a little bit more cagey of like the antagonistic force in all of this. Another con that I don't think is the end of the world, but again, kind of falls into that bucket of like, you might take issue with it, is it doesn't really have a major impact on the broad game, which I think some people were looking for. I do think it's worth playing, but I totally get why people who beat the game and just came back for this exclusively felt a bit let down. For people like me who are mid playthrough though, this is like a nice excursion, and I do think it has a positive impact on your experience because I found the story interesting. I kind of like the stealth gameplay. I like just walking and talking in this game, and for me personally, like, it was a nice break from all of the combat, so I think it kind of fits itself nicely into the broader playthrough. I also think they do a good job warning you that, like, hey, you're about to leave for a while, and once you leave, it's not like you can just come back. Like, you have to finish this quest line. This was something that A Woman's Lot bothered a lot of people with, where you just kind of got looped into this like 4 or 5 hour quest line. You like went, oh, I didn't know that's what was going to happen when I selected that dialogue option in the first KCD game. You're not really getting that here. Like, it warns you clear as day. You have to have specific clothes, so there's a lot of prep work to get in there. So I do think, again, they do a good job of kind of warning you these things, so there's no mistakes made where you get like locked off here for 6-7 hours. You're like, man, I wish I didn't do that. I mean, the game communicates it to you clear as day with a pop-up. Still, that lack of major impact on the overall main arc or ways it could kind of filter in, I did find like a little bit of a potential letdown, but I do think it's still a good story. This last con is random, but worth mentioning because I do find KCD2 to be like remarkably polished. Like, I can't believe how great this game runs. I just don't get it. I'm like, they're wizards over there, Warhorse. And so that's why, even though it's very slight, very subtle, barely noticeable, like down to like 50s, maybe high 40s, there's just moments I'm walking around the monastery and it just slightly dips for like a second or two, and then like we're back up. It's just, I guess, a testament to their overall polish of the product that they did such a good job where I just notice a little bit of a frame dip below 60 here on PC and I go, wait, I gotta let y'all know about that. But just, I guess, something to be on the lookout for if that stuff really disturbs you. But overall, as I played through all this, I liked what was here a lot. I can't sit here and tell you comfortably, like, everyone's going to love this, because I get the divisive things I like about this aren't going to be the most agreeable. I do love stealth in KCD2. I do love the walking and talking of KCD2. Like, I just love quest lines, have me going around, talking to people, collecting information, because the game does such a great job of trusting your intelligence as a player, respecting that a lot. And so to me, the walking and talking is always like mentally stimulating, because I know it's going to quiz me at some point. It's going to test me at some point. There's no like, oh, let me quickly bring up my quest log and check what the game's telling me. There's really none of that here. So again, I love that this embraces a lot of that element of the game that I'm a big fan of. It just doesn't embrace as much of the struggle that KCD2 is known for. It's very much, I would say, frictionless. Like, the only friction you have though is the 4 stealth segments that I don't feel are very like early 2010s, like we've talked about with other games doing 4 stealth segments where you're like, what? Where did this come? Like Star Wars Outlaws, where you're like, this feels terrible. I never got that feeling, especially because it's very easy to manipulate the AI in this game, and it kind of responds to you well. And I think the level itself is open enough where it's not really going to be challenging stealth in the slightest. So yeah, unfortunately, the only thing I can't throw into this video is how it stacks up to the other DLC. The other thing I could see being an issue is, like, you know, you think about how big this game is, how exciting this game is, how unbelievably great it is. And so I think for some people, just good isn't enough for Warhorse. And I could see a world where, like, this is the final DLC. This should be like the big one. And it is big, just like it may not strike the exact chord you were looking for like the rest of the game, but it does do something a bit different, and I respect it for that. So yes, unfortunately, in the sponsored video, I'm the one with the slight hot take here. But yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. Not something I think you have to go out and sprint and start a new playthrough for, or pay for, and, like, you know, pick up your old save file immediately. But definitely something I think is worth playing at some point down the line. If you go to do a replay of KCD2 like a year from now, or they're doing this Royal Edition now with all the DLC together, and you finally pick it up then, like, definitely not time poorly spent as far as I'm concerned. But I'd love to hear from you. Have you been playing Mysteria Ecclesiae? Great name, by the way. Let me know down below. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll catch you in the next one. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.